of October 16th, starting at 2 p.m. A copy of the Open Meetings Act is located at the entrance of the room. We have 3 agenda items, and before we begin, we'll go around and do introductions, starting with Joe.
Joe Lorenz, County Finance Director.
Laura Duda, County Board.
Marion Borgeson, County Board.
Tim McNally, Human Resources.
Matt Oberly, Human Resources.
Marco C. Martin, Douglas County Labor and Legislation.
Patrick Bloomingdale, County Administrator.
Catherine Hall, County Administration.
Constance Meyerndorf, Clerk's Office.
Diane Carlson, County Administration.
April Padilla, County Clerk.
Kate Morris, HR. Thank you. Okay, so with that, we will begin with item 1, the 2018 compensation for non-union employees. And did you have one more handout?
Oh, actually.
Oh, you got it? Okay.
Okay, great. Well, good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for attending. And of course, good afternoon to the rest of you that are here. Thank you for taking some time to go over the 2018 increases with us. I wanted to start, since we're looking at non-union increases, what the rest of the world is doing out in the private industry. And so looking at a few different places that we were able to get some information, notably firms like Aon Radford. They do salary surveys for companies across the country and the world. ERI is very focused on the U.S. The Hay Group Mercer also do compensation surveys. So when you look at those numbers, 3% seems to pop up a lot. So that seems to be a pretty solid increase. Unfortunately, year over year, it looks like it's been 3% for some time, even with cost of goods and things of that nature, maybe going up just a little bit more. Looking back in time a little bit to our non-union and union increases, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this slide because we've looked at it a few times over the years, but just something to bring back refresh the memory. Looking at the non-union folks getting a smaller increase percentage than the union folks did for a few years though, and trying to correct that. We're pretty close this year, so I think that we can keep on track to maintain that and not lose any more ground. So wanted to bring back kind of the pay grade structure conversation. And I don't want to get wrapped up in a lot of the details about what each grade looks like and how it relates to each other, because I don't want to get hung up on those details of it. It's really more of a high-level conceptual approach to this. And I'd be happy to share any of those details with you if you'd like to. That's certainly no problem, but I just want to kind of focus on the grand scheme of things. So right now we currently have 48 pay grades in 3 different classes. A grades generally being our department directors, management type individuals. M grades start to blur the lines a little bit more, maybe supervisors, managers, but then there's also individual contributors that may be paid in those grades. And then the G grades is typically reserved for individual contributors positions. And of course there's overlap between the grades, which may have been planned and may have occurred over time as the ranges drift a little bit. So the G and the M grades overlap, and then the M and the A grades overlap. With this structure, it's sometimes difficult to determine in a subordinate supervisory relationship how they're paid without going and looking at the actual numbers. And so what we want to do is correct this, but we know that there's going to be a cost associated with this. We want to do it in baby steps, work our way towards that ultimate goal of having a very clean and structured pay scale. So for next year, 2018, what we'd like to do is start with the G and the M. Those are going to be our individual contributors, some lower level management folks, and those are all going to be on the step grades. And so what we want to do is combine these 2 structures and eliminate basically 4 grades that overlap, and also take out the bottom 2 grades that are not being used. And so that's going to take us down to 16 total, or excuse me, from 16 to 12 total grades. We are also looking at a 3% increase. That's also what the finance has budgeted for each department this year, so we think that that's a reasonable request, especially looking at the rest of the world, private industry. And so what we want to do is phase in any new steps where those 2 grades overlapped, combining them into one. We're going to move people at the time of their next step. So there wouldn't be an initial large amount or large cost to it. In the future, we'd like to just keep this on mind. We want to look at eliminating any duplicate grades in the M and the A's. And then, or we want to look at developing a mechanism to move people through the range. So kind of moving things to steps so that they would stay in step, for lack of a better term, with their subordinates that would be on most likely on a step grade. And then, of course, reducing any of the overlap between those A and M grades. So what we'd like to do this year for our increases is a couple of different things. We want to increase the pay for employees that are in step grades 3%, employees that are on a range grade 4%, and then increase the structure by 3% for both types of structure, of both types of grades, excuse me. And so what this will do is take some of our range grade employees and move them through the range 1%. Now, of course, if they're at the maximum of the grade, then they're at the maximum of the grade, and they'll just keep at that top step. There's no steps at the top of the range. And there's a total of 16 people right now that we're looking at that are at the maximum of their range. So some costs for the step employees, looks like it's going to be $361,000. Again, this would be what we budgeted for those departments at 3% increase. The estimated cost, looking at moving people to the next higher step when they get to their step date, is going to be $122,000 for the entire year. So that will hit 2 different budget years. And this is going to be a cost that we're going to have to incur for the most part anyway, because they would already be going to another step. And then for the range employees, we come in at just a little under $300,000. Again, a little bit more than what was budgeted, but it helps to move people through the range. Okay. So as far as questions, I know I went through things kind of quickly, as I tend to do.
So the last time we talked about this, you had the idea laid out to us, and I guess is this part of what we're moving here on page 3, where you said the ones that start with the overlap in G and M grades, there's currently 16, we're gonna reduce those to 12?
Correct.
Is this recommendation or proposal based on the previous information we received, and that you had gone, and we're supposed to have further conversations with county CAO and department heads, and then we have the outside people look?
Yep.
This is what's, again, a carryover from those discussions?
Correct. And this was our way of moving towards that without incurring a very large cost in one year. And so, yeah, this is exactly, it's the same direction that we had recommended in the past. And we did meet with a compensation committee. We had Paul Essman, who does the surveys, and also CJ King from IBW. And of course, county administration was there as well. And there weren't any red flags raised at that meeting. Everyone seemed to think that it looked like a reasonable proposal.
And then were there further conversations, though, with with Patrick and the other management, because there was some concern about where the employees would land?
Yeah, we didn't really have enough time to get that all done at the end of last year, so that's why we wanted to look at phasing in this over the course of time. And then, right now, we're talking about employees who are already on steps, and so it's really, the change for them is going to be pretty minimal. When we start looking at the employees that are on range grades, that's where we may have more discussions with Patrick and the department heads.
But reducing it from 16 to 12 isn't going to necessarily have that impact,
Correct.
or it will?
It will not have.
It will not.
No.
And that's how we end up with a supposedly kind of cleaner structure,
Correct.
by getting down to the 12.
Yeah, essentially you've got grades 1 through 12, and so if somebody is, we'll just say 1 is the highest grade, they're paid the highest. So if someone's in a grade 1, we know that they are paid more than somebody in a grade 5, for example. And right now, you might have somebody in a G1 that's being paid approximately the same as somebody in M6. And so you don't really know that without pulling out both of the sheets and looking at it to make sure that it makes sense. So making it simpler and easier to understand. Absolutely.
Now, I did not catch Joe's body language when you said this was more than budgeted. I should have been looking over there.
Oh, he was very happy with it. He was quite fine.
Oh, he
It
gets a
was
raise?
more than one budgeted.
Yeah, on one-
Was what was
Oh, on one of
budgeted.
them, he said, on the range, the three
Yeah.
plus one, he said it was a little more than budgeted.
Yeah, correct, because we budgeted 3% every year for
Yeah.
increases, and so
We
this will
did,
be.
that was the same as last year. We've always been able to cover that one, partial 1%. Yeah.
Okay.
So in total though, the cost is all three of these
Correct.
added together, and we have that, Joe?
Which number?
If we add all three of these together, the 361, 122, and 292, we budgeted for all those different levels, I guess?
Yeah, essentially the 122 is gonna be everyone's step increase for the year, for 2018, so spanning the fiscal year. And then, of course, the increase to the structure would hit in this fiscal year for 2017, or excuse me, 2018, January.
Yeah, that should be in the salary adjustment account. The only problem with the potential salary adjustment account is it's not related to this, it's related to those union contract settlements. When we let them hang out there so long, then the retroactive payment becomes so large, and some of it relates to the prior year, that's usually when we have to up the salary adjustment account, not because of this, it's because of the union contracts.
But when we budgeted this, knowing that there could potentially be union contracts that we have to go retro on.
We put $1,750,000 into the salary adjustment account. So, like I say, which would have been enough if all the union contracts would settle on time. But like I said, that's always the issue, is when they don't settle on time. And so like last year, we returned like $300,000 in the salary adjustment account. Didn't get used because the contracts hadn't settled yet.
And they rarely do. I mean,
Yeah.
contracts rarely
It would be
settle.
nice if they were a little
Yeah.
quicker, but.
But
Marcos.
takes two to tango, unfortunately.
Yeah, that is the case.
If they would agree to everything we asked for, then we'd have it done in time.
Yeah, Marcos.
Okay, I just know that will be
Oh, yeah.
a question,
Of course.
and we
Absolutely.
wanna make sure that we have
A legitimate question.
that in the budget. Okay. Any other questions on this? Diane?
So if you could sum up the difference between this and what you presented last year, is it just the phase-in? And could you summarize how that works?
Yeah, I
'Cause
think the best way to describe it is that instead of taking everything and doing it all at once, we're starting at the bottom and working our way up. So we're gonna take the bottom half of the grades that we have, all of our step grades, we're gonna work on it this year and take care of it this year. And then next year, hopefully we've got the money to look at all the range grades and equalize those so that they make sense. So kind of think of it like a cake. We're building a cake for our next birthday. And the step grades are gonna be the base layer for it. The range grades are gonna be the top layer, and then we can put the frosting on top.
So no ranges are moving to steps this year?
Correct.
Okay.
And that is something that we'd like to explore more, just because there is nothing that can move people through the range except when a department budgets for that. And there isn't always the room or even necessarily the knowledge that they can budget for increases for their staff on ranges. So we'd like to fix that, but again, it's something that we can't do all at once. There's just too much money involved. So other than that, the proposal's really, it's the same concept as what we presented last year.
Matt, do you have a feel of what 1% of the employees on the range pay grade, what that extra 1% is worth?
I believe it's less than $100,000.
That's my guess too. I was thinking it was around 70,000.
I was thinking more like 85, but
Something like
it's
that,
not going to be a huge chunk.
Yeah. So
Relatively
that's
speaking, of course.
right, that's within our budget.
Any other questions or comments? All right, okay, thank you. We will move on to discussion on upcoming legislative session, county's legislative priorities. And with us, we have Marcos and then Julia Plucker.
I'll go over it. Fine.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Thank you, guys.
Marcus, do you need to? Okay.
Those, if you
Thank you.
would like to. Joe? All right. Just take one of those and one of these if you want. I'll just refer to it.
Thank you. You get one.
Do you want? Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Well, so make sure we talk about you breaking all the time. So here's the deal. The sheet, the long, the legal sheet that I handed out, in color there, kind of where we left off, and we discussed this a little bit at the Tri-County retreat. There were 24 items we took a position on, that the county did, either oppose, support, oppose a portion of a bill, etc. Because we are now going into the short session, second session of the 105th, all these bills are still alive unless they already passed. Some of them are in committee, some of them are on general file, some of them are out on second reading. So we essentially still have this list here, which only a few of them passed or are done with. We still have this list here as our priorities for going into the next session. There were a couple new items that came forward in the interim time. I'll go over some of those items with you. There was also a couple items that came up during Tri-County, which we may want to add to our list. But so I guess to kind of start us off, the existing bills on here, and it's been suggested by Sean Kelly, our lobbyist, that the board prioritize LB 43 to try and see that through. That is the Douglas County 911 surcharge item. So again, this is already on our list to support as a priority, but he would like to bring that forward again. That's really something we need to emphasize, and we do year after year. Hopefully, we will eventually accomplish it.
Excuse me, but is this about raising the 50 cents to $1 for landlords?
It is. This was his suggestion, and we keep it on our agenda each year, or in each session. But it was to emphasize LB 43, and it was to emphasize LB 81. That's Senator Blood's item that increases the application fee for handgun certificates. So those both would be revenue sources for us.
How much does it change the application fee?
I will have to check.
Isn't it like $5 to $25 or something? And don't quote me on that, but I can look it up real
Yeah.
quick.
It's nothing real drastic, it's just.
It's, no, I mean, because it's so small,
Fine. Fine.
but
And as I
It's a lot
recall, it
more.
was set maybe in '91 or something.
really?
Was the last time we set it, so
Wow.
it's,
yeah,
we'll have
it's
to look next-
outdated.
yeah.
So it's
Right.
not out of the ordinary that we'd want to up it. It just,
Okay.
it does
Right.
up it quite a bit.
It was in 91, that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Some of our.
That's not that long ago.
Exactly.
All right.
Could you answer a question for
Sure,
me? So,
yeah.
say, for instance, like the next, go down and say it's Senator Craighead, and we all know that Senator Craig has resigned. So what happens to that bill? Does somebody have to pick that up? Does it die and have to go get started again?
So, that's a fun question. This happened to me during the Bill Kentner disappearance.
Oh, okay.
Technically, someone has to pick up those bills. The Speaker Scheer has discretion as to, like this one, if it's already, I mean, is this in committee or
Yeah,
on general
in-
fund?
Still in committee, yeah.
Probably he's gonna say the ones in committee, tough nuts, they're gone, and if you want to, you can introduce a new bill. The ones that are further, and I'd have to check her docket to see if she even has any on general file, he'll probably let someone substitute. So for the most part, they're dead.
But if
Unless
somebody
someone-
doesn't pick it up, then
Then
it's
it's
dead
dead.
too.
Then it's dead.
Okay.
Well, then, as he would explain it, it's a bill without a
sponsor.
sponsor at home, so who's gonna be pushing to get it out at that point? But probably the speaker will say, listen, if it's that big of a deal to you, just introduce your own bill and start over, it'll be in the same place. Unless she's got some on general file, and I'll check that.
Okay.
But it doesn't look like any of the ones were interested.
Or
in
co-sponsor
her.
that wants to carry
Right,
it forward.
right.
So I think that also is the same.
Right, yeah, they'd have to officially put their name on it.
Because I know, I mean, that one, Kirk stuff was, we were really focused
Right.
on that
Exactly.
last year. So, and I know from conversations that I've had with Senator McAllister that he would be interested in helping with those, issues.
Okay.
And so those two, the two that you just said are the two that the lobbyists are suggesting we continue to.
Yeah,
Okay.
we definitely continue to emphasize in this session, those two. I mean, it's already one of our priorities. I just want to bring it up more as FYI to
Right.
the board that, we should, this may be where we try and help our lobbyists focus their efforts on. I don't know, that's an example. So, all right, a couple other items. I passed out a document that's a draft for discussion. It's a one-page document, it's this one right here. And on this list, again, this is our draft for discussion. It is where we have some standing shared support items that may or may not be a bill filed on the topic, but it's where we seem to be the same as Lancaster and Sarpy in wanting to support addressing, as an example, number one, addressing criminal justice reform as a result of LB 605. That's a major discussion of the Tri-County retreat. That came from the 104th. Again, that's an item that, it just kind of goes unsaid to the board. I think tries to mitigate those issues with LB 605. Number two, the example would be county mandates or, costs that are pushed down to the county. Again, those were bills, just as an example, we try and mitigate unfunded, underfunded mandates from the state. Number three, that would be it would be a revenue source for us if we could share in that automotive sales tax. Generally, the tri-counties, because we have the most amount of cars, we would.
It used to be 1 or
benefit
2% until they
most.
changed it to
Right.
this de minimis flat amount.
That is correct, yeah. So, that is something we share. Number four, now on your two documents, I circled the number 4, 1, 2, and 3 at the bottom, so that the ones that says potential. Number 4 is new, I added that after the Tri-County, some of the discussion with Commissioner Boyle, and the Sarpy County group. It would be to revise or tighten up the definition of greenbelt.
I'll never do that.
It was something that Lee suggested to me to add on. So number 4 would be something to suggest. We do know, or at least our feel is that there's support of the Tri-County to have some legislation on this. So I added it under a shared support item.
And this was Sarpy's originally?
Or Boyle.
Well, I believe the discussion was Commissioner Boyle, and then but the Sarpy County Commissioners brought it up. The Sarpy County group brought it up, and Julia may also recall that. But
I'd say let Boyle and Sarpy
it's-
County fight it out. But the legislature's never gonna touch this. I don't
Well,
think we need to invest too much energy on it.
I'm just reporting it to you, so you have that info, I guess.
Do you have a sense on that, Julia?
Yeah, I think that's, especially as we go into a short
I was gonna say
session,
the
Yeah.
short session
when we're
especially.
dealing with corrections and
Yeah. Okay.
property taxes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Although that does deal with property
Right.
taxes in some way, but.
I've heard they're really gonna target, school finance.
Yeah.
They'd like to figure out how to have schools lessen their burden on the property taxes to get ready for, not necessarily changing it money-wise this year, but getting ready for the budget in
Right.
2019.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, it's a bond issue passes.
Then the first one on there are potential, this could very well be a tri-county one, because Lancaster did bring it up. And it is to increase thresholds for the County Purchasing Act. It seems to be there's general understanding that these numbers were again out of date. So it would raise those thresholds.
When did that threshold, when
10,000.
was that?
I think they're being doubled. Am I right?
When did it go into effect?
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Like the
boy.
10,000, when did the 10,000?
Probably the eighties or something. I
No,
don't
no, no,
know.
we wanna raise it to 10,000.
Oh,
Yeah,
increase.
it's
Oh,
a new
okay.
threshold of 10,000 and then 50,000 for competitive bid. So I believe the
It's
suggestion is to
5,000.
double it.
Because it's
Right,
5,000.
5,000
It's 5,000.
and 25,000.
And so how long have those been on the books? Do you know? Just curious.
I'm
Probably
guessing.
20
Time
years.
wise.
It's been a long time.
Long
Been a
I
long
would
time.
say the eighties, but I'm guessing.
Well, they increased it during my time, so probably
90?
15 to 20 years. Is that went from 10 to 20, then maybe it went to 25, but they had doubled it from 10 to 20 at one point.
It's currently 20.
It's either 20 or 25.
Yeah, so it's more than being doubled in the suggestion to us.
I would just have the time frame,
Okay.
so for discussion purposes,
Mhm.
because that's always a, look how long it's been, type
Okay.
thing, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like, I mean, yeah, we'll do a lot more research on it, but the eighties, it's like 83 or 85.
This one it went to,
Originally went into
That was the
effect.
act.
oh, the original.
And then it's been raised
So maybe it's
over
been
the
raised
years.
once since then.
88 and LB 602 was
There was,
messed with.
I thought it went up in like the late 90s, but I could be wrong.
Right, we're just finding
Yeah,
out.
we'll definitely.
Okay,
Then 2 and 3 are items that also came up in Tri-County. There was not a lot of discussion about it, but it was to oppose LB 510 by Senator Epke at Crete. And it would, it provides a restriction on installment contracts for the purchase of real property, personal property. This discussion, I'm gonna say, we had a conversation with somebody about.
Lancaster, this is
Right,
Lancaster uses this for some reason.
Yeah, it was very brief of a conversation, but Joe's still, I think, trying to determine how or if it would affect us too much.
I don't think it does at all.
Yeah, we haven't, this, I
can
couldn't
I
see
just,
how.
what does it
No,
mean?
this is
Installment
something
contract.
that Lancaster does when they, do, real property.
With their building commission?
I think
I
so.
think so.
Yeah.
They finance things, or have historically.
And this is how they do it with installment.
And she's wanting to restrict that?
Well, they wanna change it. They wanna put a restriction on it, and Lancaster is coming back.
Is opposing to it?
Right.
Okay. I wonder why.
That doesn't affect
why would
us.
it-
I don't
don't
think
care
so.
about it.
And then,
It's Crete and Lancaster?
Creed's right.
No,
no,
it's just,
it's
no.
the Gage County maybe, right?
Yeah, Crete is.
Yeah, that's interesting. Oh, maybe that's why, Gage. They're in trouble.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, then number 3 is a Senator Friesen bill, LB 570, providing a property tax exemption for all tangible personal property. So this would definitely be a revenue loss to Douglas County. If this, that's a pretty good, that's a pretty good description of what the bill does. It's providing a property tax exemption for all personal property, like no more, that's it. So,
What the heck?
so again, this is one that came up in the Tri-County retreat. It would not go into effect till 2019, but it was an item that, and again, I want to say it's Sarpy brought it up.
Yeah, but we get from personal property, it's probably worth, 10% of our tax bill comes from taxes on personal property.
And of course, this has no talk of replacing revenue or anything, just eliminate.
Right.
Right.
Sounds good in theory, eliminate all the taxes.
Oh, yeah. Well, and again, that's where I think numbers would be good for discussion purposes on
How much?
what the loss would be
Yes.
for us.
You're right.
Yeah, we did that.
All right, then, the backside there, 4 through 8, these were items that you've seen before. They were just suggested to me prior to October of 2016, and they did not make it into our first session cut, but it was, I'm just having them on here as part of the overall 105th discussion. So commissioners may want to throw one on, may not, but at least I thought I'd provide them again to commissioners. These were the suggestions that came from commissioners back in October of 2016, or before, the summertime even, on potential legislation. But again, these are not I have them toward the back because they were not discussed at Tri-County, et cetera.
Well, I think again, with the short session, some of these things, I don't know if they want to even take them up this time. They can stay on our list, but.
Yeah, at least on some of them, it's fine to be on record, supporting some of this, but that doesn't mean we invest much time or effort on them.
Well, these are ones that we don't even have any, this isn't a bill.
No, these are not
We
bills.
would have to find sponsors.
Oh.
Yeah, we would need a senator to file something to accomplish this legislation. These are just ideas that were given out from board members back before we started the 105th.
Number 8 is Boyle.
I think, well, 4 is too.
Well, so it's 5.
Oh, 6 is Peebles and Boyles.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
And to increase penalties for the crime, I think that's Boyles too. But again, I mean, if you look at what, I think this year, we should probably really focus on those revenue ones that are going to dramatically affect us. Again, short session, you can have conversation and you can try to find folks that might wanna take it up in the next long session, but I just don't think we're gonna get a whole lot of movement on stuff that's not.
Not already
Yeah.
filed.
I don't know if we're gonna get anything
Right.
Yeah.
that's gonna benefit us.
It may again be a defensive.
It's gonna be
Type.
totally defensive.
That's right.
Yeah,
right.
particularly
Yeah.
with the courts,
Yeah.
if they do push for 3 new judges, and that's gonna put us in a bind, and the 7th judge for juvenile court, that would put us in a
Right.
bind.
Well, according to Corey, it's just one district.
Okay, just one,
Right.
but still
That
gonna.
can change
yeah.
too, but that's gonna make a big,
Yep,
one is gonna
Yes,
blow our budget.
one is significant.
Yeah,
it is.
yeah. So,
And, Fury Lake, called me up and said they've been adding new adult probation officers, so we're almost out of space at 72nd and Blondo already.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
well,
And we're full already. We were full when we opened the one off of 84th and Center. Haskell or Spring or Grover, whatever it is out there.
Yep.
So they keep on adding both adult and juvenile probation officers.
So that may be, I mean, with that being said, where'd the one go that talked about the office space, the unfunded mandate?
Number
Two.
two.
Number 2.
Number
So
2 on
again,
there,
that
that's
would
a-
be one to really potentially hit hard on. And again, we can show, just in the last few years, the rising cost that we've had of having to add offices for
And then they
probation.
eliminated that reimbursement we used to get from HHS, remember? They
Right.
did that a couple of years ago, so
We don't get that.
that,
Right. So we could make a good argument with that, so, you know, those are the type of things I think, again, we're gonna have to focus our attention on this legislative session, so.
If I can back up for a minute, typically I'm a few minutes behind the rest of the group. This LB 510 on the installment contracts that we say is only for only impact Lincoln Lancaster with their building commission, but as we look at building a new juvenile courthouse, and we really haven't figured out how we're gonna pay for it yet. I wonder if there's any chance that this could impact, I mean, I think there may be some alternative ideas that we may end up pursuing on that. And I wonder if this could be a factor on any of those.
That's a very good point.
I have to read the bill and see what it says,
Yeah, maybe
because
if you could give us a.
installment contracts is the first time I had heard that term used in context of what we do. It was at the retreat,
Okay.
so,
Okay.
I mean, we can talk to Paul Cohen and read the bill and see if the words installment contracts are even in their verbiage.
Well, currently, for us, what we're saying is we don't think it
Yeah.
is.
I mean, and whether it would be, I mean,
But it
what
could.
scenario, what possible
Right.
scenario could exist that it
Right.
would be an issue?
If what if some private group puts up a building and we wanna do a lease purchase
Some kind of
on
lease
that
purchase.
building?
Right.
Then that would, could be,
That would
That's
be
what
it.
I'm wondering, if we,
Yeah.
if we end up wanting to go with something like that,
right,
would we be impacted?
yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And again, I guess it would have to be whatever, we don't know what's really in the bill yet, because we haven't looked at it.
That's right.
It's very short.
It is
It's
Yeah,
only a
it's a
paragraph
short bill,
long, I'll
so
read that
we'll-
one.
Really?
That's unheard of,
It is.
Really
a
short.
paragraph.
But
It
it's
just says
impact could
eliminate
be-
But its
installment.
impact
Could be,
big.
you know,
Right.
very broad, so.
Oh, real or personal property.
Oh,
We lease computers and.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't
I'd have to
even
take a
know,
look
I
at
mean-
it.
Yeah, it's
All
a
right.
cat
An installment contract would be usually on a purchase of
On a
something,
purchase,
not a
yeah.
lease of something.
It's
It would be-
installment
Yeah, but if
purchase
you're
contract.
leasing to own.
Or
If you're
lease
leasing to
to
own
own
it, right.
Kind of,
That's a capital lease, not an operating lease.
Okay.
Oh.
$25 million.
Anything over or what? What's the 25?
Just,
That's-
how long is the paragraph?
That's the
Cumulative,
limit.
You can only have, right, 25
Mhm.
million.
Mhm.
So which is problematic. I mean, if that's
On
the
all
course
such
of
existing
business,
I might
installment
build one floor
contracts.
of our new juvenile courthouse.
that's the most you can have, is 25 million, is what it's saying.
That's the current statute or the current, or the proposed?
That's the
bill?
This is,
That's
all,
the bill.
this is all new language, so I guess right now there's no limit.
We
Right.
may wanna be a little bit vigilant on that one. Make sure it
Absolutely.
doesn't.
Yeah, let me call up the finance director at Lancaster and talk to him about it and have him explain to me how they use it.
Thank you.
Can you do some poking around with Senator Epke's
I will.
folks to see where this is coming from?
Mhm.
Okay.
I'm trying to look at the hearing notes real quick. Yeah, 510 places a cap of $25 million.
Hmm. Okay. Anything else?
all right, yeah, there is, just a few. Just a few items, here we go. Okay, so,
But you asked if there was anything
So
else.
just this weekend, so this weekend, Sean just kind of bounced to me some ideas. Again, he has a couple concerns. His concerns would be one of the examples is eliminate any barriers to the county justice reinvestment grant program. So that's potentially that's exactly how he wrote it, and I guess either maybe Julia knows a little bit about it, or I can talk to Sean about it a little bit later. But it was from earlier this weekend that yeah. he
Eliminate
just wrote,
what?
eliminate any barriers to the county justice reinvestment grant program.
And this came up during Tri-County, if I remember.
Okay.
And I don't know enough about this to even be dangerous, but Sean and I were kind of just briefly talking about it. But supposedly the way it was written, you remember this discussion, right? That they had gotten some money for a grant and was it Lancaster got some money?
Yeah.
And we wanted to check to see if it was worded broadly enough that we could apply for some of those grant monies. I think that's what he's talking about.
That was the
So-
605 money,
But
wasn't
that
it?
yeah, that was a 605
Yeah.
match
Yeah,
with some
maybe that's
federal
not-
dollars. I thought that like they got
Right,
some
right.
programming dollars for 605.
And yeah, we didn't
So
apply
what-
for it because we
what-
have enough money we get enough grant money for programming. We need additional. We need
That's what I
money
thought he
for.
was
We need
talking
money
about,
for.
but-
So on the 65 issue, Lancaster just brought up that they received, I don't really want to say it was like
70,000.
Not much.
Okay,
So
yeah, it was,
the whole
it was
pool's
super-
only
It
500.
was not a lot of money, but they were able to match federal dollars somehow
Use that as a match for federal dollars.
as a match.
For a
That's
new
what I
grant.
thought he was talking
So
about.
But you
How
still have
did
when
they
you.
get money back from 605
So here's
already?
because here's how it happened. All right. So they
New program.
submitted whatever
Right.
data they have, so they could use 75,000 for new programs. Mark didn't submit an application because he says we don't have an issue with getting grant money for programming. We have plenty of grant money for programming. We need money for capital improvement projects, and you can't use any of that money for capital improvement projects. And he also said that he's still working on getting accurate data. I think it's because we're so much bigger than the other jails, Lancaster and Sarpy, that they have an easier time getting data to support the effect of 605. But
Could you ask Lancaster for their data that they used? I think they would share that. All right, so,
okay, so
so
yeah,
that's something to watch, or
That's
what's
one-
the thing?
I thought that's what he was talking about, but I could be totally wrong.
okay.
But that is something we should watch, because if, you know, there's money out there to be had, there shouldn't be any barrier statutorily for us to go after that.
Right, okay.
So then Sean's only other two comments were, be sure that we monitor any property tax reduction bills. So we are doing that. And his last comment was also to monitor any outstanding issues or changes to the Turk process or Turk procedures. And so that's obviously a big topic of our discussion.
And Turk?
Turk, yeah. Monitoring any Turk changes or proposed changes, or issues outstanding with the Turk process and procedures.
Okay.
So,
And then there was, like Julie, you were saying, because there's a couple of property tax bills that one of them, you're the one who told me about it, aren't you? Where they're, would give like a refund back. Like say you pay, your tax bill to schools equals $2,000, and the state would issue you back $1,000 to reduce the reliance on that property tax. But I mean, it
That's-
comes with a price tag of like $1 billion some dollars, which I don't think will go anywhere, but those kind of bills are out there.
yeah, it hasn't been filed yet. I think this was more of a discussion
Oh,
item, I
okay.
want to say,
Okay.
because there was another related one that was Senator Brewer.
And Senator,
And so,
what's his name? Erdman. Doesn't he have one too?
Erdman does have one.
or at least just discussion of a bill
Yeah,
that
yeah.
could be
Yeah,
filed.
that's-
There is a cap one, I know that Senator, oh my God, I totally
I think
blanked
that's
on the name.
Brewers is the
Um,
cap.
It could be, so, yeah.
Okay. All right. Those will probably be flying off the shelves a lot, I think. Okay,
All right,
we're done.
well, great.
I
Yeah.
didn't say.
Thank you, thank you.
No more questions.
Except for I do have to say other business. Okay. With that, we are adjourned.
Okay.
Marcus, I just sent you,
Thank you, Claire, for coming.
I'll be sure, remember.
Okay.
At Pete's bill.
Make it
Okay.
official.
She says that it's based